So this past week, I had a pretty kind of horrible Warframe, I guess you could call it, relapse thing happen. Over a week, I sank about 40 hours into the game. So considering that I usually play it for maybe 1 or 2 hours a week, this is a pretty big difference. All because I really wanted the Saren Prime frame. She has grace, class. Look at that. A prime frame, for those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, basically is a more powerful version of a normal frame, which is like a character class in Warframe. And you can only get them from farming tower missions, or by like paying an insane amount. Oh, really? In order to access these tower missions, you need tower keys, which you also have to farm. Who the hell needs Stardew Valley? I got fucking Warframe! What this all boils down to is basically playing like the same couple of missions for 40 hours. I thought farming in World of Warcraft was bad. But in the end, I got it. Thanks in no small part to the help of the wonderful people in Discord. No matter how much you love Warframe's combat though, 40 hours in 1 week is a lot. Enough to probably burn anyone out. Once I had assembled my deadly maiden, I found my interest waning back to casual play. That 40-hour orchestra of mad, non-stop play had subsided back to other games like Black Desert and The Division. But by the end of this, I was wondering why I bothered. I mean, I went from about 20-some hours on Warframe to 70-some hours on Warframe in 1 week. That is a lot of time to pound into a game that I played before, that I'm not playing as a mainline game. Why did I bother? I think it has more to do with motivation and how games motivate us to play through the boring stuff so we can get to the parts that we want. Any game that wants you to stick around for like a long period of time generally has to employ grind on you. I mean, outside of a few specific titles that manage to get around it, there's a pretty damn apparent grind associated with like a lot of games. And I'm not just talking about MMOs, I'm talking about like Ubisoft games in particular are really bad for this. The Division has you grinding, Black Desert has you grinding, any MMORPG employs a lot of grind basically no matter what you do. Raiding, my favorite thing like in video games, is grind. It's just multiplayer grind on a weekly basis. Warframe is literally built entirely on grind. And let's be honest here, grind can suck. I mean, spending hours doing the same thing, hoping for a result, a piece of loot or something, only to repeat it under maybe some different circumstances for another reward, it can be painful. No wonder a lot of people who play video games get sick and tired of the grind. No wonder a lot of people hate level grinding, or gear grinding, or clutch grinding. Last one is a totally different group of people who also probably hate grinds. So why do I spend 40 hours in 1 week doing the same thing to get pieces of Saren Prime? Why do people spend 5 nights a week raiding in Warcraft or WildStar? Why do Korean MMOs with so much grind do so very well? They are, or in some cases were, very good at motivating players to do this. And I'm not just talking about like the Skinner box. Like you dangle a piece of loot at the end of a long tunnel. I'm not really talking about that. That system conditions us to want to continue to do things, but I'm talking brass tacks. Why the hell do we begin doing this stuff in the first place? If the Skinner box keeps us playing, what puts us in the Skinner box? For those of you who don't know, Skinner box is a psychological term for a form of operant conditioning created by a gentleman named B.F. Skinner, who rewarded rats in a cage, which would eventually condition them to continue to do the things that would get them rewarded. Sounds kind of familiar. More importantly, how can we use psychology and the Skinner box mechanics to at least give a layman's explanation of why some MMORPGs are doing super well, like, Warframe's not really an MMORPG, but it's kind of like the same thing. And other MMORPGs like World of Warcraft are currently failing pretty hard, despite the fact that it's apparent that a lot of people still want to play World of Warcraft. So in 1981, you got this other psychologist named Edwin Locke, not to be confused with like this Locke or this Locke, completing a number of empirical studies in relation to motivation Through these studies, he put together something called goal-setting theory, in which he points out that people are most motivated to do something when they have a specific and challenging goal. If the goal was too vague, they'd lose interest, like I do in Guild Wars 2. If the goal is too difficult, they would throw in the towel, like somebody looking for something easier. And if the goal was too easy, they would lose interest, similar to a vague goal. As well, there is the goal for Saren Prime. Saren Prime parts drop in very specific places, which gives you a very specific goal. But they have a fairly low drop rate, which gives you a rather challenging goal. Therefore, you spend 40 hours in a week to get a slightly better version of a character that you already have. Here's a good example of this action relating to Warcraft. In vanilla Warcraft, and even a little bit into Burning Crusade, there was a term called full epic. Basically, it meant that you had an epic item in every slot on your character. This was pretty cool and pretty desirable because epics were actually kind of super rare back then. You either got them through raiding, high-level PvP, or reputation grinds. There were some crafting recipes as well, but they had a very high difficulty ceiling to get to them, and there were also hyper-rare drops. Full epic was meaningful and powerful. When you were full epic, you had made it. You were a consummate badass. People were motivated to get epics for every slot, regardless of what they were doing in the game. Nowadays, that motivation has kind of entirely died off because it's really easy to get an epic in every slot in Warcraft. The ideas of epics and even legendaries have been cheapened to the point where the motivation they once provided for players is gone. It's easy to be full epic. You pretty much get the expansion legendary without even really trying these days. Now that's kind of super mega, almost kind of dangerous, because when you take motivation out of a game, you suddenly might find yourself not so eager to play that game, even if you do reach the top, or if that motivation is simply removed. And I mean, we could probably pretty clearly explain that with like this. You could argue that item level is a powerful motivator now, and you'd probably be right, but I think item level is not nearly as powerful a motivator as the concept of full epic or epics. I mean, an aggregate number representing your power level has less impact behind it than slotting in some sweet, sweet purples, and motivation is, if nothing else, based on emotional impact. While the increasing the strength and aggregate number of your dick-punching potential is certainly a powerful draw to a lot of people, it loses a lot of the emotional impact and kind of boils down the whole process into a mathematical formula for how to deal the most damage to enemy X, which really kind of takes away a lot of that emotional impact and therefore motivation that concepts like full epic once had. Even tier sets are treated this way. I'm not saying that item level is a bad thing or that it needs to go. It is in fact incredibly useful for a lot of things. It's a very good way to mathematically represent the character's abilities, but I do think that it does take away some of that motivational impact of getting an upgrade. The same thing could really be said for systems like LFR and bosses. You can motivate a player to kill a boss throughout a game and then allow them to mindlessly do it in an LFR group. Even if they have the ability to do it on higher difficulties, it cheapens the motivation. WildStar has this problem at early levels. Your motivation to reach level 50 is tarnished by the fact that you can't find anyone to play with. You can't even kill the bosses you're being told to kill. It becomes impossible. It's kind of the opposite problem to get any early dungeon groups, and therefore at lower levels people tend to lose their motivation and fade away. And motivation doesn't even just extend to these parts of the game. You could be motivated to raid because you want cool loot, or fight cool bosses, or beat the villain, or narrative reasons, but you could also be motivated by your friends. I mean, roleplay communities are a huge thing for this kind of motivation. Or you could be motivated to work on your crazy, like, WildStar house. Like, there's some really crazy ones out there. The point is, though, if you want people to kind of stick around, you need to motivate them, and this motivation needs to be specific and challenging. The real tough part about motivation is that it's kind of subjective, and everybody has their own opinion of it. This includes the idea of challenging motivation. Everybody's got a different difficulty bar. A lot of people really love WildStar because it's very difficult, just like how a lot of people really love Dark Souls because it's very difficult. But a lot of people also don't love WildStar because it's very difficult, and don't love Dark Souls because it's very difficult. This is why I really actually like the idea of separate difficulty levels in a raid, which is why I'm kind of okay with it happening in Red Moon Terror coming up for WildStar, and why I actually am okay with it happening in World of Warcraft as well. Different difficulties allow different people to experiment at different levels, as well as provides new motivations for getting up to higher levels. Is it a grind? Yes, but I think it's a grind that has a strong motivation behind it, just like Saren Prime was for me. Getting up another level in difficulty is definitely a good thing, and I like that idea. At the same time, things like LFR cheapen that same motivation and make it less effective, because LFR is literally just a grind. You get the items from it, it is the naked form of a Skinner box. It's not that interesting to play in. We need those challenging and specific goals to go alongside these difficulty levels to make them more worthwhile. Grind is good, so long as it's motivated, I guess is kind of what I'm trying to say here. Motivation is such a powerful thing in games, and I think it's going to continue to be such a powerful thing in games. I'm motivated to hit max level in The Division. I'm motivated to continue working towards max level in Black Desert. I'm motivated to do so many things right now. I'm just really excited for all these, and the power of motivation is so palpable. Warcraft could come back to life if it could find a way to motivate people again. WildStar could easily pull out of its slump if it could just find a way to motivate, and Warframe is easily killing it in the free-to-play market because it knows exactly how to motivate. Now, if only we could motivate some of these publishers to let people take risks on motivating us players. Hey there, and thank you very much for watching this little video thesis essay thing on motivation in video games and how we get motivated to push through the grind. This episode is brought to you by Andrew Novak's Novak Hotel, the only hotel with no vacancies, and Hayden Brown presents The Exile, coming to a dinner theater near you. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please, I hope you would support the channel and like and subscribe. And otherwise, thank you very much again for watching. It's like the third time. But you all have a great one.